Hey everyone, welcome to this weekly Sidereal astrology forecast for the week of October 5th through the 11th of 2020. All right, so this week we have three very important events taking place. One is that it is the implementation phase of the lunar month. So last Thursday we had the full moon, and this is usually a time of shifts and changes along our life journey, and also sometimes gaining some new perspectives. So if there has been new perspective since Thursday, it could be a great week of implementing these things, as we will have the support and willingness to do so. Now this week we also do have Mars, the planet of drive and initiative, squaring up to deep and intense Pluto. So there could be some very deep energy going on collectively. This can feel like we're very attached to our needs and desires, and it can be very instinctual, right? Very intense in that sense. So really good to be conscious of this if there is that drive to, maybe have something the way that we want it, or to pursue our needs and desires in a very deep way. To be conscious of that, and to also practice as much non-attachment as possible, which can help the energy flow, especially with Mars in Pisces and retrograde. It has been very important to be more receptive to the divine process of things, and cultivate a little bit more of this receptivity. And the last thing that's very important this week is at the end of the week going into next, we're going to have the last contact that we've had since February, involving expansive Jupiter in a harmonious sextile with spiritual Neptune. So this has been perhaps this year since February. If you have felt a little bit open-minded about something, maybe a little bit inspired towards something that's more important to you on a spiritual or soul level, right? Something important to you on a soul level, really good to maybe finalize and complete. So it's just an opening for that, and it could be towards the later part of the week, just good for finding a little bit more of that, again, acceptance and peace, and doing things more important to us in terms of our inspirations and soul guidedness. All right, so let's take a look at this as well as all the other aspects here in more detail when we return. All right, so we're going to look at the sky here for each day of the week, starting with Monday. And again, we are using the visible sky, which is very different from mainstream astrology. You will hear me say a lot of signs are different from maybe what you're hearing on other channels on YouTube or on other sources on the internet. And that's because we're using the actual size, which unfortunately in mainstream astrology, they use the seasons mostly. So the signs do change. If you do hear some things are different, like Mars in Pisces, for example, definitely check out that link down below for more information. All right, so before we look at each day of the week, let's do a quick recap to see where everything is in the monthly sense. And we do still have, of course, the Sun and Mercury in more improvement-oriented Virgo. It's been really good these past 2 to 3 weeks to really focus on things that we can be really doing the work with, right? Virgo is all about improving things in our life, finding solutions, fixing things, really getting into the nitty and gritty details of life. So it's still really good to do in terms of all this work energy, improvement energy, doing energy, which is where we're focused collectively at this time. But of course, remembering to balance this out with that greater receptivity, which we'll be talking about today, because we did just have that full moon in Pisces, which was a reminder that since Thursday, if there were some things in your life that you felt like you did want to have a little bit more peace with, a little bit more of a receptive approach to, all of that more watery energy, that peace-finding energy, that more soul-guided energy really balances out this more doing energy of Virgo. Now we do have Venus in Leo still, so still good to be enjoying some creative self-expression, maybe some playfulness, some fun, possibly in those interpersonal relationships which Venus represents, but just valuing and enjoying a bit of self-expression, a bit of things we find fun and passionate in life. All right, and then of course, which we'll be talking about, Mars still in deep watery Pisces, so still good to be receptive when we're taking action, right? Where we're putting our drive, our energy is a bit unknown at this time. There's a lot of uncertainty about things, and so it is a time of turning more inward and making sure that we are checking in with our spiritual selves, getting plenty of receptive time or rest time, and wherever we're putting our action and energy, we're just more willing to go with the flow a little bit more as things are, again, in the waters of the deeper oceanic energies of life at the moment with Mars here. All right, so let's take a look first at Monday. Now, no major aspects these first couple days of the week here, so most of the emphasis will be on the moon's placement. Now, again, the most important thing about this week in general, though, is that if there were some shifts of perspective since Thursday, last Thursday, then it's a great week for implementing these things. We're going to be in the disseminating and third quarter phase of the lunar cycle, which means it's implementation mode. And if there were some new things that have shifted, or again, new perspectives, great to start to implement and challenge ourselves to implement here this week. But usually this later part of the cycle is a bit easier to do that than it is earlier in the cycle. All right, so with Monday though, we do have the moon shifting out of more initiating Aries. Themes from last Sunday maybe were around taking initiative. And I still think it's a great, particularly early part of the day to do that. Cultivating more action, more initiative, more assertiveness, more of that active energy of Aries. But as the day unfolds and all the way up until Thursday, we're going to have the moon in more grounded Taurus. So this first half of the week is really good for finding a little bit more of the steady elements of life. To take things one step at a time, to maybe stop and smell the roses, to connect to nature, beauty, aesthetics. It's all about getting into the more sensual and grounded elements and to be grateful for what we have in life on a material level. So great to do that, find that more grounded inner resourcefulness that does want to take things steadily, one step at a time. It's our more resourceful, more self-reliant side. You know, it's Taurus the bull, one step at a time, but also externally connecting to the beauties of life and the natural elements of life. Really is good. Now, once we start to get into the Wednesday time period, Mercury, the planet of our thoughts and communications, will be in opposition to Uranus, the planet of things out of left field, right? Thinking outside the box. So really good to do that. A great day for thinking in a way that maybe is outside of our normal way of thinking about things, to challenge our own ideas and perspectives about things in life, and maybe to just allow a little bit of change into our routines, right? Especially with Mercury and Virgo, and again, all this doing energy. Opposite Uranus can be great for mixing some things up a little bit. So with our mind, again, thinking outside the box, maybe learning some new and different things, it can be very innovative and very visionary energy. But also in our routines, incorporating some change and getting outside of our normal routines could be great. But we do want to find the balance with this, make sure we're not going to any extremes just because it's an opposition. And so we don't want to teeter-totter too much to one extreme or the other with either too much disruption, too much freedom, too much of that challenging the status quo and change, but just a nice healthy balance of that, just to be conscious of it. And in this way, it can be very good for, again, all these more innovative and visionary things that we could be thinking about or applying in our day-to-day life. Now, around this part of the week, we're going to start to feel a very important aspect, which is Mars squaring up to deep Pluto. So again, Mars, the planet of our drives, our needs, right? Squaring up to Pluto, which brings up the more instinctual and attachments in life. So collectively, this can be a tense energy. Now, we did feel this back already since August 13th was the first contact with this before Mars went retrograde. So now it's the middle contact with Mars retrograde. And so this signifies that things are probably a little bit more acclimated to the energy by now. It's not as intense maybe as it was when it first started, again, around August 13th. But still, nonetheless, really good to see how can we have this more non-attached approach to the things that we want in life, right? Because if we hold on too tight, if we try to control things too much, if we get too attached to an outcome, then that's where, the clash can happen. And this can be within ourselves. It can also be interpersonally. So it's just really good to bring that extra awareness and mindfulness to that side that certainly does want our needs met and does want to do what's right for ourselves and, pursue things, but in that way of being aware of it. And simply through that conscious awareness, it can really balance out a lot of the more intense energies of Pluto. Also, like I said, practicing non-attachment to the outcome of things can also be very constructive. And in this way, it can be a very empowering week, actually, because if there are some fears, some things that maybe we're inhibited to do, or we're afraid of, or we feel like we could really empower ourselves by taking that action and initiative consciously, then this can be great. This can be a great part of the larger cycle. Like I said, it's been since August 13th. The last contact will be December 23rd, right? So this whole time period, this can still be a very empowering time for doing things in the face of fears and empowering ourselves and making any changes that we feel like we need to make but might be a bit uncomfortable to do so, that we could get the nice, kick in the butt, so to speak, to make those changes or to face those fears. Now, with Mars in Pisces retrograde, I do want to again remind that the energy here is about taking a more receptive approach, though, because with Mars more internalized in the oceans of Pisces, this is all about, first of all, being a little bit more receptive, listening to the currents of life, putting energy where the current's taking us versus trying to swim upstream, and also to make sure that we are doing things that are more important to us spiritually, right? More important to us on a soul level. And this can be very constructive, right? This is the time of soul searching. It's the time of turning inward. It's the time of practicing a little bit more of this willingness to go with the flow and see how there's this larger cosmic plan or larger process in play that we can be a little bit more attuned to, right? And with that approach, I think, like I said, it could be a very empowering, very constructive week, especially because we will be in this implementation mode of the lunar cycle. All right, and then the energy starts to ease off of that as we start to come out of the Friday time period. I do want to mention that as we do get into the Friday time period with this aspect, the moon will be shifting into Gemini. So as a backdrop to both Friday and Saturday, I think it's really good for just simply, learning some new things. Maybe getting into our more inquisitive side, curiosity, and willingness to share and exchange with others. So open lines of communication, being willing to learn, being willing to see eye to eye, maybe picking up the book, doing some reading or writing, can make it also a great way of working with this phase of the cycle. We'll probably start to feel that Thursday through Friday. All right, and then once we start to get into the Saturday time period, Venus will trine up to Uranus, so we have some harmony with that eccentric Uranus energy. And this will deal a little bit more with what we're enjoying and also with relationships. So Friday into Saturday, maybe enjoying some new and different connections, maybe connecting with those we normally wouldn't connect to, or in a completely new and different way, or maybe just doing exciting and different things with people, or just even with ourselves, right? Venus represents just what we're enjoying and just what we value. So enjoying a bit of that unorthodoxy, a bit of that, willingness to mix things up a little bit, new and different experiences, that could be great over the weekend. And then from the late Saturday time going into Sunday, the moon will go into more protective Cancer. So late Saturday, all day Sunday, really good for this more protective side of life. Maybe spending time at home, maybe getting more of our private life in order, and connecting to what's more important to our feelings, and maybe reflecting on the past a little bit. All in all, to connect more to our soul, essentially, with Cancer, our bodies, our more private and protective selves. Really good time for some caring and nurturing in those interpersonal relationships as well. All right, and then as we do get to Sunday, the sun will be squaring Jupiter. So while we're doing that more feeling-based stuff and maybe mixing things up a little bit, this could be really good for really seeing the abstract aspects of life, right? Jupiter expands things, expands the sun. We could be feeling a bit optimistic on one hand, and then on another hand, maybe not so much. Sometimes with squares to Jupiter, we can have a bit of a pendulum swing with over or under optimism or over or under inspiration about things. So do note there are opportunities, there are potentials, especially with Jupiter sextile Neptune, we'll talk about next. Yeah, implement them, right? Squares are about implementation. And again, that's really what this week is pointing towards. Could also be a great day on Sunday, just in general, for philosophy, things like astrology, spirituality, more of the abstract realms with that contact to Jupiter, maybe even some adventurousness as well, actually. All right, but the last most important thing about this week, along with the intense energies of Mars and Pluto, is that as we do get into the weekend, but especially going into next week, we do have this last and final opening. It's nothing major, but it is the planet of expansion, Jupiter, in a harmonious sextile with watery Neptune. And so this has been going on since that January time period, or excuse me, since February. So since February 20th. And this has been this opening to really listen to any type of inspiration that we may have that might be a dream or ideal of some kind. And to maybe finalize some of these things. If there were some things from late February that you were a little inspired about, a little bit hopeful about, this could be a finalization of that, a culmination of it. If not, this could just be a really good time to, again, really get in touch with that inner self, which is what so many of the planets are really pointing towards, and pursuing some of these things that are going to lead to a little bit more peace into our life, a little bit more receptivity, maybe alone time, private time, more of the internalized energy. And this can be a nice aspect. Again, it's not forcing us into it. In fact, it's just an opening. It's just available, but it could be really good for enjoying some of the more soul-guided stuff. And again, maybe some things we're inspired about. All right, everyone. So that is the week in a nutshell. The most important thing again is implementation week with the lunar cycle. Lots of Uranus energy, good for mixing things up in healthy and conscious ways. We do have a bit of that intense energy with Mars and Pluto since last time it was August 13th. And so seeing how we can have that non-attachment and extra conscious awareness so everything's nice and balanced with that assertive side and our needs and desires. But nonetheless, if there's anything you do want to face fears with or empower yourself with, it could be extremely constructive week to do so. And then as we do get to that weekend, if there were any openings since February that you're inspired about, could be a completion of that. And again, fundamentally though, an opening to connect to the more receptive and yet inspiring sides of ourselves. All right, everyone, so have a fantastic week. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to click that like button if you haven't yet. If you're not yet signed up for MTZ Insiders, definitely check that out for more videos like this one. But again, have a great one, and I'll see you all next time for the next weekly forecast. Take care.